In Dead by Daylight, maps are one of the least balanced things in the entire game. For some killers, just by being put on a certain map can make the match infinitely harder for them and put them in an almost unwinnable situation against good survivors. Or on the other hand, make survivors get put on maps with incredibly tight 3gens with minimal pallets or vault locations. So then what would happen if you gave players the ability to decide the most important factor in a map? Well, that's what map offerings do. When you burn a map offering, unless someone else plays another one to challenge it or a sacrificial ward, players will be sent to that map. So why is this a problem, you may ask? It's just a map. Well, in today's video, we'll talk about that. Map offerings have been in the game for a long time, like since the beginning of Dead by Daylight, but they used to come in brown and yellow rarities, making it only a slight chance to go to the map instead of the guaranteed chance that we have now. And just to clarify something, while the add-on does say tremendously increased chance instead of the guaranteed one that I say, the current offerings literally increase the odds by 9,999. So it's no longer just an increased chance, it's basically guaranteed. So the problem is pretty simple with map offerings, and that is home field advantage. In every single game ever, stages or maps can make a huge difference, and being able to freely choose what stage you'd like to play on is a huge advantage. Imagine you're playing a shooter, and you want to play as a sniper. Obviously you'd want to pick a map with long sightlines rather than one that is close quarters with lots of walls. Then say you're playing a battle royale, and you had an item that could just make the storm always close in where you wanted it to go. Even in fighting games, you can counterpick stages to pick a smaller one in order to make zoners have a harder time playing the game. You get my point by now. Being able to decide where everyone else must play makes you inherently have a huge advantage, and Dead by Daylight is no exception. If you're playing a slow killer or a zoning killer, you would obviously want to pick a stage that is on the smaller side and easier to control. Or if you're playing as survivors, you would want to pick big maps with great loops. The problem, of course, comes in with how bad most maps are balanced. Since map offerings guaranteed where you're going to go unless someone uses a sacrificial ward, which I'll talk about later, you basically only need to talk about the extremes on both sides, like Ormond, Garden of Joy, Eyrie of Crows, Badham for survivors, or Dead Dog, Midwich, or Haddonfield for killers, because like, who is sending people to Yamaoka Estate? If someone wants to severely tip the scales in their favor and have a better chance at winning, all they have to do is use an offering for it and make the game more balanced towards their side. And obviously, I'm not saying that by bringing a map offering, it's a guaranteed insta-win and the killer, just loses. No, it's nothing like that. However, it does definitely make the biggest impact on a match out of everything. I mean, would you rather be put on something like Badham or Disturbed Ward, or let the game randomly decide where you're going to be sent to and you get something like Haddonfield or a farm map? Obviously, for a player who wants the best shot at winning, they burn the offering to be put on a more advantageous map rather than letting the game decide where to go and they get put on Haddonfield. However, the problem becomes exponentially worse when you have to deal with people who not only burn the offering, but build around it. See, for some perks, they may not always gain value on some maps. Some maps may have limited vault locations and you brought something like Lithe or Bamboozle, or there's 0 spots to fall down from and you have Balanced Landing. Or you bring something like a Hex perk build and all of the Hex perks spawn right next to generators or next to hooks, so they get cleansed instantly. However, if you bring a map offering, all that changes. Let's say you want to run Balanced Landing. Instead of getting put on Larry's with one singular drop down point on the entire map, you can send yourself to Crotus Pen Asylum, which have incredibly strong main buildings with great drop down points that would let you use that speed to get to basically anywhere on the map you want to go. Or let's say you want to play stealthy, so you pick a huge map like Mother's Dwelling or Temple of Purgation, incredibly dark maps with tons of fog. Then the opposite, if you pick Doctor for a Terror Radius build, you can send yourself to something like The Game or Midwich, which would let you shock the entire map by using Static Blast. Or if you want to play as a stealth killer like, Stealth Mirror Myers, you can send yourself to Larry's. By burning map offerings, it lets the players heavily rig the game and make it much harder for the other side. However, these two scenarios still pale in comparison to the worst case scenario, and that is, well, obviously a 4-man Swift sending you to like Ormond or Badham, Eyrie of Crows, etc., because that is an incredibly hard win. A 4-man Swift that's good and know what they're doing and they send you to Eyrie of Crows, you can't win. You can't win. Map offerings, if used smartly, can turn what would be a normal match, let's say you have a 50% chance of winning, turns it into like a 70% chance or higher depending on who's bringing it. The real issue is that, well, how do you balance an offering like this? Well, Behavior tried to balance out offerings by adding an item called the Sacrificial Ward, which disables map offerings used unless all 4 other players burn the exact same offering, but that never really happens. Great, amazing, this definitely deals with map offerings now, right? Right? Well, no, not really. And I'm not talking about by the whole burning 4 offerings things, no, but rather, how are you supposed to know when someone's using one? there is zero way, tell, or indicator that someone is bringing a map offering. For all you know, you burn a sacrificial ward, which is something horrible, and I'll talk about this shortly, only for the survivors to just bring luck or blood point offerings. And now you lost out on an incredibly rare item and extra blood points. Honestly, I'd be more mad about losing the blood points in that scenario. And then that gets into the real issue, that is how rare these wards are. Wards are, well, yes, they're rare. They're literally rare. That's the tier that they are, but they shouldn't be. With how many map offerings there are in the game, every time a green node for offerings spawn, it has to fight with like 20 other offerings to get a spot, which is what makes it so hard to get. This is probably my biggest issue with him, and let me give some examples for you. Here's my Trapper. This is a character I quite literally have only played twice for a video ever. 2 singular matches, and let's look at how many wards I have. None. 0. Let's look at how many map offerings I have in comparison. 20 bajillion. Now let's look at Dredge, my highest level killer. Again, a bazillion map offerings, but 1 singular ward. I mean, I have more black wards, because when a purple offering spawns, it only has to contest with a handful of other items, like 3 or 4. But with greens, well, it's fighting against literally every map offering in the game, blood point offerings, and hook offerings. It doesn't even have a chance to spawn when the odds are weighed so heavily in map's favor. I wouldn't be so upset with map offerings if I didn't have to waste an incredibly rare resource in order to deal with an incredibly common one. I mean, it's literally like for every 30 map offerings you find, you get 1 sacrificial ward, and that just doesn't make sense. So with map offerings, it's not really like they're a problem, right? I don't believe that they should be removed, and I like the idea of being able to go to a map that you want to play on. However, then the fact is that both sides can easily abuse this by going to the most unbalanced map in the game and basically make the match twice as easy and boring and unfun, not to mention uncounterable, since again, there is zero way to tell if someone is bringing a map offering until you see it. So I came up with 2 ideas to make map offerings more balanced. First off is, instead of making green offerings increase the odds of being sent to a map like 9,999, just make it like a 50% chance. Make it so instead of a quote-unquote tremendously increased chance, make it an actual chance. Because if you had told me that there's a 99.99% chance of something happening, I'd say it would always happen, because it not happening is a statistical anomaly. Like, genuinely, I have never ever in my life seen a map offering fail. In all of my years of playing Dead by Daylight, watching Dead by Daylight, whenever someone brings a green offering, they get sent to that map. It never fails. It's not a chance, it always sends you there. If we compare it to the old add-ons before they got removed, you see actual numbers that make sense, that are in the single digits. Instead of making it such a huge number that always wins, just make it so you have like a 25% chance to be sent to the map you want to go to, instead of just being able to use 1 item and influence the whole match. That way, when you load into a match and see an Eyrie of Crows offering being used, instead of going like, well, I guess I have to play an Eyrie of Crows and hope that they don't have 4 balanced landings and, windows, opportunity, resilience, etc., you can at least have hope and pray the game rolls in your favor. And if you really believe that being able to send everyone to RCPD or Hawkins or the game by using 1 item that nobody knows about or can counter, you were just wrong, I'm sorry. Secondly, make sacrificial wards either less rare rarity-wise, or make the odds of them spawning much higher. Like I mentioned earlier, for a rare offering, it has to fight with so many other offerings that it's not just rare, it's rarer than iridescence. If you make them an uncommon or common, they would not only have to fight with smaller pools of items, but they would also be able to spawn more often because they'd be common and uncommon rarity. Because with rare offerings, every time a new realm is added, that's another offering that the sacrificial ward will have to fight with. Nostromo, Toba Landing, RCPD, etc. So every time they want to add a new map that's its own new thing, that's another thing sacrificial ward will have to fight with. Because as I've shown, these things are super rare. I mean, I have more black wards, which are a rarity above them. I have more of those than this thing. So in conclusion, like I said, there's no real way to counter or prep for a map offering, since it's not like an icon appears above the survivor's head that shows what they're bringing, so you can't just be like, oh, I see that they're bringing that map offering, I'll use a sacrificial ward to counter it. No, there's nothing like that. There's no way to tell. Instead, it's just as the map's loading, you see that they burned a Bad Ham or an Eyrie of Crows offering, and you just, sink into your seat and you're like, great, I get to play on this map again. And I don't believe that they should be removed, because I mean, the ability to send yourself to a map that you want to play on, like Macmillan maps or a new map, makes sense. However, being able to send everyone to like RCPD or Larry's, it's just a crime. That shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't be able to send everyone to indoor maps. It's just way too much power for one side, and I don't really think that it should be a guaranteed chance that it is now. So lower the odds or make sacrificial wards more common. I don't really have anything else to say other than take care of yourselves and have a damn good one. Peace.